Money and salaries and paychecks. It's all very taboo, isn't it, to talk about how much we get paid? And that's exactly what I want to do in this video, because I don't think that money talk should be a thing that we avoid. The more we talk about how much we earn, the more we can help each other to be paid what we're worth. So right now, I want to take you through my design career so far and my history of raises and negotiations, and talk about the different changes that led to my different salary increases over the past 8 years. A few disclaimers that I want to make before we get into this video fully. I am going to be sharing real numbers in this video because why the heck not? But what's more important is the context surrounding those numbers. So that's what I want you to focus on, okay? My career has spanned different countries, different currencies, and location has a huge impact on how much you are paid for certain design jobs. So just keep that in mind when I'm talking about these different jobs. I'm going to tell you where they were in the world, and that should help give you some context there. I'll be converting all my salaries into US dollars though, just so we've got like a constant going throughout this. Different areas and disciplines within design can also be paid very differently. So what I'm sharing with you here is my personal experience as a web and graphic designer. I also want to note that the only reason I feel comfortable talking about this now is because the company I currently work for has standardized salaries. So I feel confident that I'm being paid fairly, but I haven't always felt that way. So please don't take any of these numbers that I'm sharing with you as a benchmark or as my advice on what you should ask for at certain stages of your career. Cool? All right, with that out of the way, let's get into it. My first ever full-time job as a designer was working as a graphic designer on the marketing team at a reseller of Mitsubishi Electric products in New Zealand. I had worked there part-time while I finished my studies, and basically as soon as I finished my last university classes, they offered me a full-time job for 35,000 New Zealand dollars. I did not negotiate that salary at all, which, spoiler alert, is unfortunately a common theme throughout my career history. But honestly, I was just thrilled to be earning a full-time living doing design work. After I'd been there a few months, they gave me about a 14% raise, and I can't remember if I had any other raises while I was at that company, but the next big jump I had in my salary was when I left that job to start my career in tech. So this first job in tech was a marketing design role at an accounting software company based in Wellington, New Zealand called Xero. The company had, I think, around 350, 400 employees worldwide when I started there. And I was making this transition from print to web. And when they asked me my salary expectations, I said that I wanted to make over $50,000. And what they offered me was $60,000. So well over what I offered. I was obviously undervaluing myself, and I appreciate that Xero didn't take advantage of that. I took that offer again without negotiating because it was a 50% increase on the salary I was earning at Mitsubishi Electric, and so I was stoked with that. I know now that I should have negotiated because one, it can't hurt to try, right? Might as well. And two, when you get a raise at a company, it's usually based on a percentage of the salary that you're on. So when you come in, you're sort of setting this baseline for what you're getting paid, and your raises that you get on top of that will be building on that initial salary. So the higher you can negotiate for that initial salary to be, the more you'll get in your raises essentially. But you live and you learn. So not negotiating when you first start out, it can limit your potential earnings at the company as a whole, which is unfortunate. So learn from my mistake. Xero was also a company though that offered bonuses, both in the form of a cash bonus yearly, where it was like a set amount and then you get a percentage of it based on how well the company did. So you might get like 80% of your cash bonus for that year, for example. And they also had what they called a long-term bonus in the form of shares, because Xero was a publicly traded company. So I've got some Xero shares from my time working there. I'm not going to go too deeply into benefits in this video, but it's important to note that the overall package is what you should look at when you're evaluating a role, not just the pure number of salary. I got a couple of raises at my time at Xero through just performance reviews, and as the company grew, my tenure there sort of became more and more valuable, and I ended up being paid 73,000 New Zealand dollars by the time I left New Zealand and moved to London. Now, the cool thing about this move to London was that Xero had an office there, so I was able to transfer within the company and not have to look for a job in London, which was cool. But my biggest mistake here was that I treated this move too much like Xero was doing me a favor and not enough like I was filling a role, a vacant role of a design position in the office in London. They didn't have any designer there anymore when I moved over to fill that. Xero didn't help with any relocation costs for this move because they said it was a self-initiated thing, so that's why they weren't going to pay for it. And yeah, basically I just have some regrets about how I handled that situation. It was all very complex, but yeah, I think there was some things that I could have done better. Anyway, I did know that living in London, I was going to have a higher cost of living, and Xero knew this too. And so what they offered me for this transition, for this move to do the same job essentially that I was doing in New Zealand but based in London, they offered me £42,000 as my starting salary. So that was about a 15% increase from my salary for the same role in New Zealand. Now, I had done my research and found that the cost of living in London was about 27% higher than in New Zealand, and so that's what I was hoping for in a raise and what I did speak to my manager about, but this is what we ended up on, and I took it, and I don't regret that because it did allow me to move to London pretty seamlessly. To turn up in a country on the other side of the world with a job was pretty great. My next salary increase came about 6 months later when I actually left that job at Xero to start working at a London-based tech company. Now in this role, the mistake that I made in this process was actually answering them when they asked me what I was earning currently. This is something that a potential employer is always going to ask you in an interview, and I would advise you not to be the person who says a number first. When they ask you what you're earning or what you want to earn, it's always a good idea to ask them for what the range is for this role. And then you can give your answer based on that. If you go in there and lay a number down on the table first, then you are setting that benchmark, and it's potential that the company could take advantage of you in doing that. Honestly, what you are currently earning should have no impact on what your value is in a role at a new company. It shouldn't play a part. So don't be the first one to say a number. Anyway, I told them that my salary package I was earning currently at Xero was £45,000. And they said, well, you're probably actually getting paid pretty well for where you're at in your career. And they ended up offering to match that. In a stroke of boldness, though, I decided I was going to try and negotiate. And I asked them for a whole £1,000 extra. I asked for £46,000 and they agreed pretty much immediately. And that's when I knew that I obviously should have asked for way more than that in the negotiation. I don't know, I tried. This is what I hate about this whole salary negotiation process, is that you end up being paid a lot of the times based on your negotiation skills rather than your design skills, which I think is lame. But anyway, this ended up being about a 9.5% increase on my base salary from my role at Xero, but because Edited didn't offer any bonuses or that sort of thing as part of a salary package, I was ending up being paid around about the same, which was a good salary to allow me to live comfortably in Zone 2 in London. Sadly, I did not get any sort of raise or even a performance review that I remember in the whole 18 months I was there. I don't know, the company wasn't great at career development, I will say that. But so my next change in salary, my next increase came when I again changed roles to my current job that I have now at ConvertKit. This is my first remote role, and it's also a US-based company, so there's a whole lot of different factors in there. The company was about 20-something people, I think, when I started. Oh, and for context, Edited was maybe about 40-ish when I started, just to give you some context for that salary that they offered me. Anyway, I was really excited with this new job offer to be working remote and to not be having to commute every day in London, because that was taking up a lot of time. But I did want to make sure that I was being paid enough to sustain my lifestyle in London and to keep up with the cost of living there. I ended up starting at ConvertKit on just a few $1,000s more than what I was making Edited, but ConvertKit is a company that also has some great benefits, like they do a vacation bonus, we do profit sharing, where you get to share in the profits of the company. So I felt confident that it was a smart decision salary-wise and that I was going to be making more, as well as having like a better work-life balance with this whole remote thing. In stark contrast to that previous role where I had no raises, I've had quite a few increases in salary since I've been at ConvertKit. I ended up getting an 8 to 10% raise every 6 months for the first little while until the company did something that I really like and introduced those standardized salaries that I talked about in the beginning. So this is based on data collected by Radford. They put together like a report on the industry for lots of different roles within tech. They give you an idea of where the market is at, what the market rate is for different roles at various different levels. Companies can purchase access to this data and choose what percentile of the market rate they want to meet when paying their employees. So when this got introduced, I was set as a level 3 web UX designer, and my salary increased to $85,000 US. Now, like I said, negotiation hasn't really been much of a through line in this salary history, has it? But I got a chance to practice some negotiation skills earlier this year when I decided to advocate for myself to be moved up from a level 3 to a level 4. Each level within these standardized salaries has a description of the skills and responsibilities that you're expected to have and be responsible for at each different level. So I essentially took a look at what the level 4 ones were and made a case for myself and talked to my manager, and he agreed that it was time to move me up a level. This resulted in a 23.5% increase in my salary, which is very cool, and I was proud of myself for having advocated for myself, We just recently got in a new year's worth of Radford data, and they remapped all the salaries and the levels and that sort of thing, and so I ended up getting a little bit of an increase there because the market rate for my job has increased. So right now my salary is $115,000 US, which is a 9.5 increase on what I was earning previously. And because our salaries are standardized, I can expect that I'll stay at that level either until the market rate for my role changes, until the company decides to change the percentile at which we're meeting of these industry averages, or until I get a promotion to be moved up a level again. This way of doing things means that I'm not getting those 8 to 10% regular every 6 months raises like I was before, but I like a lot better because I know that I'm being paid fairly, and I know that everyone else on my team is being paid fairly as well, and that's important to me. I don't know if these numbers are surprising to you at all, either surprisingly low or surprisingly high, depending on where you're coming at this from. I know that I could be earning a lot more for my role if I wanted to work at a bigger tech company, or perhaps one of the hot startups with a lot of VC funding, that sort of thing. You can get some very high salaries at those sorts of companies. But what's more important to me is quality of life, working for a mission-driven company that I believe in and doing work I love. So yeah, I'm happy with where I'm at the moment. I hope this was interesting to you to hear about my career history from a salary perspective. Keep in mind, like I said at the start, that none of these numbers should really be used as a benchmark. There is location and experience and inflation even to consider. But yeah, I hope it was interesting for you to hear about nonetheless. Thank you for watching. I've left a link in the description to a podcast episode, because if you didn't know, I have a podcast called Design Life with a co-host, my friend Femke, who works at Uber. She's a product designer, and we did an episode where we talked about compensation and negotiation. So if you want to dive more in depth on all this stuff, hear more about it, then go give that a listen. It'll be linked below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.